Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-hosts, Jeff Mack and Shannon Lane, Newmark Knight Frank, Drew Hanlon, Ethan Milrod, GoTo, Sean Blackburn and Jamie Cook, Y Prime, and David Jackowitz, Evolution Financial Group. Jeff, can you please give us a rundown on who we have on the air today?
Sure, and I'd like to thank Jamie Cook and Sean Blackburn for helping us organize today's show. We have Audrey Greenberg, co-founder, executive managing director at Discovery Labs, Stella Vnook, president and co-founder of MaiCell Therapeutics, Casey O'Donnell, president and CEO of Impact Services, and Bill Leinweber is the president and CEO of NDRI.
Well, let's get to our first guest, Audrey Greenberg, co-founder and executive managing director of the Discovery Labs. Audrey, what is the Discovery Labs? What are you guys up to?
The Discovery Labs is an ecosystem for speeding the path to commercialization for cell and gene therapy companies.
That sounds pretty interesting. Where are you from originally, and how many brothers and sisters, and where are you in the pecking order?
I'm from West Bloomfield, Michigan, and I'm smack dab in the middle, just like the state of Michigan, with an older brother and younger sister.
And 8 to 14, what kind of stuff were you involved with as a kid?
Dance, theater, school, friends.
A little bit of everything, it sounds like. You're pretty active. Jeffrey?
Audrey, are you more like your mom or dad?
A little bit of both. My mom is a heavily intellectual person, and my father is very outgoing, so I'd say I'm a good mix of both.
So what do you bring to work every day that you learn from your mom?
To work hard, bring your full self to work in every respect, and give it all you got.
And how about dad?
Dad, make sure to network and maintain those relationships. In the industry I'm in, it's very important in life sciences to have strong partnerships with your customers and your joint venture partners.
Perfect. Drew?
Audrey, you mentioned in the green room you had a pretty large set of friends growing up. Why was that?
You know what? I love to learn from people and connect with people. I feel like it's the being of life. And so it's something that keeps me going every day.
And are those folks still your friends today?
Yes, I've maintained lifelong friendships. It's hard. I've moved around a lot, but through social media and all of that good stuff, it's fun to stay in touch with everyone.
Ethan?
Audrey, speaking of learning, I think you mentioned earlier that education played a really important part in your life growing up. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I loved school. I always sat in the front row. I was that one. And I asked a lot of questions and drove everyone crazy, but I loved to learn. And so I had a veracity and quest for knowledge.
Were there any specific subjects that you really loved to learn about?
I loved science. I loved math.
What was it about science and math?
You know what? It's very interesting. There's a set of rules. And so you learn the rules, but then there's creativity in the gray area. And so to have the standard rules, but the ability to learn how to play with them, that was what really motivated me.
So what effect did that have on you as you carved out your path moving into the future?
Well, it's interesting. You know, I started in accounting, which is obviously very rules-based. But then as I went through my career and was very focused on making money in investment banking and mergers and acquisitions, I sort of pivoted at some point into doing things that were more better for the societal well-being. And that's what brought me here today. Cell and gene therapies are curative in terms of saving people's lives. And that
David?
You mentioned that both of your parents were physicians. How do you think that impacted where you are today?
Science is very important. Patient centricity and being able to connect with patients. My mother was an optometrist. She would actually take notes about the patient. So when they came back in, she'd connect with them about their kids or their work.
Mm-hmm. What's that have to do with who you are nowadays?
Well, it's a good mix between science and connectivity in terms of having a good social network and being a good partner to your customers. And at the same time, understanding their technical needs and being able to bring everything that they need to the table.
Jamie?
As a female leader, did you have any female business role models?
Oh, definitely. My mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother, if you can believe it, were all working women, dual career families. And just having that example in my mother where she was so dedicated to her job, but also very dedicated to her children and her husband was a very impressive example every day for me.
Mm-hmm. Sean?
Audrey, with such a diverse background, what triggered you to start Discovery Labs, and how big do you think you can grow it?
Oh, the future is wide open. It's such an exciting time for cell and gene therapy. There's tremendous growth. There's so much capital flowing into the space. We're saving people's lives. It's just a trifecta of wonderfulness. So I love doing that every day.
Shannon.
Audrey, earlier we learned that you're passionate about supporting the community and you're involved in a number of nonprofits. How young were you when that first started showing up?
I have a really impressionable memory of my mother being involved in the Hunger Project. And I remember the TV reporter showing up on our driveway that was filled with chalk that my sister and I made lots of pictures, and just a really impressive display of trying to solve the world's hunger problem.
And what do you remember feeling when those reporters showed up to your driveway?
I was just so proud of my mom and her dedication to people, not just our family, but to the world, and making sure that everyone has something to eat and shelter. It was just wonderful. Warms my heart to this day.
How do you think that's affecting you, the fact that you felt so proud of your mom?
You know what? She is still to this day had such an impression on me growing up, and I talk to her almost daily.
What's that have to do with who you are?
Yeah, I think it's just ingrained in my soul to help others, to be completely dedicated as a mother to my children and a wife to my husband and a workhorse for my company. Yeah.
Shannon, didn't you have another question there?
Yeah, going off of what you just said, how do you manage it all with 3 kids at home, being the executive managing director at Discovery Labs? Where does the drive and how do you do it?
Yeah, considering you're so committed to your husband and the family and the kids and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, just having that partner, my husband is amazingly supportive of everything that I do, even though he has an intense career as well. And then obviously having a childcare support system. As a female executive, it's just incredibly important as a mother to have that backup for your children when you have late nights at the office or weekends that you need to work.
Jeffrey?
Your chairman is Brian O'Neill. I suppose working from him is like 9 to 5 and no weekends or go home at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, the 6 a.m. wake-up calls and the 10 p.m. goodnight calls, just about what we have to do and what's on our plate and a lot to tackle. He's very intense and very charismatic and focused and dedicated, and he demands that from everyone, which I actually appreciate and love. Never a dull moment.
What have you learned from your 3 kids, Audrey?
Oh, God, just how to love and be there and see the world through a new set of eyes, going through this election and everything else that's happening right now. It's so interesting to hear their fresh perspective.
Wow. Audrey, for our young listening audience, especially our young women that are aspiring to be leaders in the world, what lessons would you share with them?
Keep at it. Leadership is taken, not given. Have a seat at the table. Voice your opinions, be respectful of others, and always remember that you have something to add.
So you enjoy, you're able to deal with a lot of intensity, it feels like, and you're able to ingest it and then figure out and organize the rest of the team. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, that's my strong suit. You hit the nail on the head.
What's your strong suit?
Being able to take the chaos and make it into a workable business model, have a good strategic plan, execute against it, and jibe if you need to. How young were you when that was showing up? Oh, my goodness. I think since the beginning. I think I came out, reading the New York Times and figuring out how to solve problems. It just was something that really impressed me every day, is figuring out the world around me. Well, you mentioned earlier when I asked you what was going on 8 to 14, you went like dance, theater, school, friends. It's like, boy, it's like you're pretty crisp in your thinking. On the other hand, you're able to juggle a lot of stuff. And I'm wondering if that crisp thinking and able to juggle a lot of stuff has anything to do with your success in building this organization known as the Discovery Labs? Yeah, I mean, we've started this from scratch. It was a brand new idea just a year and a half ago. And we've taken an amazing 1.6 million square foot campus in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and transformed it into a regional hub for cell and gene therapy manufacturing, which is really the next generation of medicine. Isn't it frightening working from a blank piece of paper? Oh, no, I love it. It is so exciting to be able to figure out how to make things happen and what team members you need, what systems you need to put in place. it doesn't scare me. It motivates me, but I'm sort of a risk taker in nature. So,
what is the website address for the Discovery Labs?
The Discovery Labs.
TheDiscoveryLabs.com. We've been speaking with Audrey Greenberg, co-founder and executive managing director of the Discovery Labs here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, it's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, please stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment right after this quick break.
You now can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your advisors. Yes, this radio and online social media exposure is free and quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors.
We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Stella Vnook, president and co-founder of MaiCell Therapeutics. Stella, what is MaiCell Therapeutics? What are you guys doing?
MaiCell is a very innovative cell-based technology company focused on delivering new treatments for people with diabetes.
How many brothers and sisters do you have, and where are you from originally?
I'm the only child, and I'm sure my mother would love to have more children, but my father died when I was 3. And frankly, I'm from Belarus, which was at that time part of former Soviet Union, and I moved to this country when I was 14.
Didn't you tell us there were some health things going on with you, which is maybe one of the reasons Mom had to uproot herself and you to come here?
It absolutely was. It was a Chernobyl explosion when I was much younger that had impacted me and my mother. At that time, we didn't know the ramifications, but my mother knew that I was getting sicker, and she knew that she had to get me away from the lack of treatment into the country that can provide the treatments. And therefore, she left everything and everyone behind and went into a long journey that finally landed us in the United States.
But when you guys got to the United States, you had a lot of money. You had it pretty cushy, didn't you?
When we left, we weren't actually allowed to take anything but a suitcase in one hand, and she had a 13-year-old at the time in the other hand. So whatever you can pack into one suitcase, then 5'2" woman can carry, and basically no money whatsoever.
Gotcha. Ethan.
Stella, what was that like being 13, 14 years old, coming to a new country with new surroundings, without knowing the language? What was that like making friends?
It was frankly terrifying, and but you have no choice. You have to quickly realize that this is it. There's no turning back. You have to move forward, and you learn to figure out really quickly in your survival mode, now what?
Wow, it sounds like you need a lot of courage.
Well, you need a lot of courage, you need a lot of resilience, and you need to have that type of attitude that you are a survivor.
What did those lessons that you learned then teach you moving forward in your life?
It stayed with me throughout my career. No matter whether I was working for a large company and starting out at the lowest levels of the organization, or when I was running companies and I was a founder, you have to drive forward. You have to bring your motivation, enthusiasm, and resilience. And when you get up the ladder, you have to realize that people depend on you. So that type of courage and desire to lead and to survive, frankly, served me well.
Jeffrey?
So Stella, as a female president of this company you co-founded, what role models did you have in your life?
Well, I keep it very simple. I will stick to my mother. She was my hero.
And what did she tell you that encouraged you to start your own firm, having been with large pharma?
Well, to be honest with you, my mother was very sick before she passed. She developed cancer as a result of radiation. And I remember through one of the last chemo treatments she had, she said, you know what, Stella, at this point, you've done unimaginable. You've worked for brilliant companies. I think you're ready. You're ready to start that company. Unfortunately, she passed before I founded the company. But those words that I'm ready, that encouragement really always stuck with me.
Jamie?
From the beginning, did you recognize that coming to the U.S. gave you an opportunity to be successful and control your own destiny?
From the beginning, it was nothing but a chaos in my head of how I'm going to survive. I had no English, no communication skills. I honestly thought my life was over as a teenager. And, being able to look back and how we were able, just my mother and I, pick ourselves up and reroot ourselves in this country it is something that I'm proud of the most.
Sean?
Stella, as someone really strong in math, how do you deal with both the emotions and the risks of running your own business and managing all those people?
To be honest with you, math is easy, at least to me. There's a formula, there's a solution. I think what is complicated is the current healthcare environment. What is complicated is a startup world, is being able to understand how to raise money, how to bring the right team, who has the right assets, what is the best technology. I think that application of theory, science, being able to problem solve is what enables you to be the right founder, the right leader for the organization.
Shannon?
Stella, when you first came to the U.S. and were facing so many challenges, was there somebody that took you under their wing?
To be honest with you, there have been many people along my path that have helped me. I don't think there was a single person. I think that I was blessed with and grateful for many mentors along the way that have shaped me into the person that I am, have given me the opportunity that led me to where I am now.
And having many mentors, how does that affect the way you're building your team today?
Yeah.
It is absolutely critical to recognize the strength and power of having the right individuals sitting next to you around the table. And I think it's critical to be able to recognize as you shift from a high performer in the competitive environment to a confident business owner, to allow your team to bring the best, to enjoy your work, to have mutual respect and appreciation, really setting those egos aside.
True.
So I want to go back to your mom, when you came to the U.S. What's the one thing that she showed you the most?
She showed me desire to live. She showed me not giving up. For us, failure was not an option. But she also is the person that drives me every day to find that new cure, new treatment, new cell therapy.
What do you hear your mom whispering in your ear when you're faced with a tough decision?
It would probably be an odd thing to say, but she was always very accepting and empathetic. And for someone as tough and bold as she was, people don't always recognize that. And I think she would always whisper, accept where you are, move forward. And she was always the person who would give so much love to others. And sometimes we forget that empathy and kindness component.
David?
Is that part of your culture?
I don't think it's part of my culture. I think my culture is all about drive, brutal assertiveness, and survival. I think that's my culture.
But how about the way you're building the business?
I think I'm building the business from everything that I've learned over the past 30 years. Your drive and assertiveness will only take you this far. It has to be led from the heart, the compassion, the leadership, the self-awareness has to shine right through.
Mm-hmm. David?
At the end of the day, we're creating treatment that will enable people to live longer. It has to be about that.
Okay. David?
You mentioned your father passed away when you were 3 years old. How do you think that shaped you?
I think my father passing away was traumatic for my mother, yet my stepfather and my grandmother, my grandfather and my grandmother stepped right in. So we lived in this extended family with my mom, my grandfather, and my grandmother. I did not feel deprived. My grandfather was a colonel and a politician, and actually all the communication skills I have are from him. So I think the greater loss I felt when I lost my mother.
Audrey?
Stella, how do you do it all? This is incredible.
Well, thank you. Just like you, honestly, it's really about prioritizing and being able to focus on achieving that one thing you're doing right now really, really well. And if I'm with my kids, then I'm with my kids, and I'm with my family, then I attend to my family. But all of the time, I actually love doing what I do. I love being an entrepreneur. I love running a company. I love being a mother and being a wife and being a friend.
Stella,
so I think
Stella, do you ever sleep?
Sleeping is overrated.
What are you most proud of, Stella?
I would say I'm proud of being able to call this country my home. My new foundation have been able to reroot and replant and start my heritage here and provide to my kids that stability that I didn't get to enjoy.
Website address of MaiCell Therapeutics?
MaiCellTherapeutics.com.
And we've been speaking with Stella Vnook, president and co-founder of MaiCell Therapeutics here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com. And we'll be back in a moment right after this quick break. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, and we'd like to introduce Casey O'Donnell, who's president and CEO of Impact Services. Casey, what is Impact Services? What are you guys doing?
Impact focuses on community and economic development in Philly, specifically in the Kensington section.
What's the Kensington section all about?
Historically working class neighborhood, and then once all the jobs went overseas, there had been a significant decline, and it has pretty rough shape, although it is a resilient community full of really strong people.
Where are you from originally? Where'd you grow up, and what kind of neighborhood?
Germantown section of Philadelphia, which is a historic neighborhood that has always been diverse and racially integrated pre-Civil War. And it is socioeconomically diverse as well. Between Chestnut Hill, a very affluent neighborhood, and North Philly, which is certainly a less affluent neighborhood.
So what was the effect of you growing up in a diverse community, in a diverse neighborhood, on what you're doing nowadays, building Impact Services?
So I think my experience there and in Philadelphia has made me a bridge builder. I've always lived with feet in different worlds, and I've been able to help build bridges between cultures and communities.
Got you. Jeffrey?
You had an interesting upbringing, your dad being a politician and your mom having her own business in real estate in the neighborhood. Who are you more like?
Growing up more like my dad and now more like my mom.
What do you mean?
So my mom is incredibly emotionally intelligent and emotionally intuitive. And for me, it took a few decades to develop that.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you take to work every day? Mom's advice, dad's advice, how do they impact what you're doing today?
I think it's certainly a balance. Mom, I bring her compassion to work every day, and not compassion when it's easy. It's easy to be compassionate towards a cooing baby. Compassion when it's most difficult. And I think my dad's ability to analyze a situation and make good decisions.
Jamie?
Casey, how old were you when you started giving back, and what were you doing?
Yeah, how young were you?
About 11, but I don't see it as giving back. It is my life.
What were you doing?
So my mom, my brother and I were making my mom crazy. And so she put us to work with a real estate developer cleaning up after laborers. And I ended up trying to negotiate a raise for all of them because they were underpaid.
Wait a minute. How young were you?
11 or 12.
How old were the laborers?
20s, 30s.
Who'd you talk to?
The owner of the company.
How old was he or she?
I was 50s at the time.
Why'd you do that?
We all used to sit around at lunch and they would complain about how little they had and how little they were being paid. And I asked them if they wanted me to go ask for raises, and they all voted yes. So I went to his office and advocated for raises.
What's that have to do with you being president and CEO of Impact Services? Oh, I see. You're the bridge.
With a sense, I think, of what's fair.
Uh-huh. Okay. Just want to make sure I understood, Ethan.
Casey, advocating for workers at 11 years old is a very mature thing to do. Where'd you learn that from?
I think the boldness and advocacy from my father. But when you have clarity, what seems like the right thing to do is easy.
What'd you learn from going to the boss and advocating for your friends at work? What'd you learn from that?
Well, he kicked me out of his office. They did not get raises, and I was making $1 an hour, and he gave me a raise to $1.25.
Uh-huh.
I have a feeling you didn't stop after that, even though he kicked you out of the office.
Drew?
I just want to ask what your friends would tell us about you.
My friends growing up or my friends now?
Yeah, your friends growing up.
My friends growing up would tell you that I was fair and objective, and they could go to me to mediate conflict.
So you were the bridge builder there as well.
Absolutely.
Shannon?
Casey, earlier you mentioned that it's important to have compassion in business, and you were telling Jeff that you got that from your mom. How did your mom show you compassion and teach you that?
I think my mom, first of all, she is an example of somebody that survives and thrives. And she taught me that everyone is flawed, and we need to treat people with compassion and humanity, no matter what the condition, and coupled with accountability.
Mm-hmm. David?
Casey, you have this great sense of empathy. Where do you think that came from?
I think I witnessed a lot as a kid that most kids probably don't have the opportunity to see, and seeing disparities among people either geographically very close or all living together and having different opportunities. I think that grows in you pretty quickly when you see that.
What grows in you?
A sense of empathy, and if you have a curiosity, asking why people are living in these different conditions and what opportunities they did or didn't have.
Wait a minute.
And starting to.
Why you didn't want to go hang out with the kids with the nicer cars?
So my parents, I lived in Germantown and went to private school my whole life. So I went to some of the best private schools in Philadelphia and was witness to the crack epidemic and poverty, and had to fight my way to one of the schools as a young kid. And so seeing those contrasts, my parents, would send me to Chestnut Hill to hang out with kids that had some money. And then you'd come back to Germantown and start to wonder.
But as opposed to wanting to hang out with the rich kids, that's not what you wanted to do.
Not always entirely comfortable.
Uh-huh.
And I think a lot of kids that grew up with wealth maybe weren't entirely aware of what they had.
Sean?
Not always the case, but that was my observation.
Casey, you had great role models and parents. Who influenced you either as a youngster or recently to start Impact Services?
One, I didn't start the company. I took over the company from a founding CEO and had to rebuild it. So it is very much a different company. I think leaders in my professional life, one guy that passed away ran a child welfare organization, and he was able to treat everyone equally. And I saw the responses that he got from people, and what he brought every day was that warmth and compassion, coupled with accountability and boundary setting, which resonated with me from my upbringing. And I saw that it worked. And then unfortunately, I've also worked for tyrants, and I see what doesn't work and what is very destructive. And frankly, those things have been equally influential. But growing up, my parents had a community around them that was really diverse professionally, intellectually, and, racially, socioeconomically. And all of those people took care of all the kids.
So you're really comfortable juggling a wide variety of energy, it sounds like, as opposed to your wanting to go hang out with the kids with a lot of money. That's not what really matters to you, does it?
It doesn't. Don't get me wrong. I don't begrudge anyone their wealth. And, if I don't run out of time, hopefully someday I can be wealthy also. But it is certainly not the priority.
Mm-hmm.
Casey, at age 11, you were kind of fighting the fight. What advice are you giving your 14-year-old boy these days?
One, take care of himself. So this idea that you absolutely have to sacrifice, and something my dad taught me is that you will take dents to your integrity, just never compromise it. But it's really important that people take care of themselves, and that there is absolutely nothing wrong with personal success, but you got to live a balanced life.
Casey, you mentioned earlier that you were involved with the martial arts. Why are you involved with the martial arts, and what are you getting out of it that you bring to work every day?
So I'm a jiu-jitsu practitioner. I don't like being punched in the face, so I don't do any striking. But you learn, one, humility, being submitted by people, and having to actually tap out of submissions teaches you something every day. It also teaches you how to be gentle with people when you could really damage them, and working till exhaustion, and working through exhaustion.
Mm-hmm. What's the website address of this organization known as Impact Services?
ImpactServices.org.
We've been speaking with Casey O'Donnell, President and CEO of Impact Services, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. We'll be back in a moment, right after this break. Don't go away.
Recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, Executive Leaders Radio. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable. Yes, this radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors for free exposure.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Bill Leinweber, President and CEO of NDRI. Bill, what is NDRI?
NDRI is a nonprofit organization funded in part by the National Institutes of Health that supports biomedical research.
And where you're from originally, and how many brothers and sisters, where are you in the pecking order?
I grew up in the northern part of West Virginia, 5 siblings. I am second in those 5, 1 older sister, 3 younger brothers.
And tell me a little bit about 8 to 14. What kind of stuff were you engaged in?
A mix of school. I was a good student, really liked school, service, scouts, church-related activities, and sports, more individual-focused sports.
Mm-hmm. Jeffrey?
Bill, in the green room, we were talking about your mom and dad and how they really encouraged education. Who are you more like?
I'm at this point in life, I'd say very much a mix of both.
But your dad kind of guided you towards service. How did he do that, Bill?
Quietly, I think just his approach to his work. He was a fireman for 33 years. And just approached his work with a lot of honor and integrity and humbleness.
Sure.
What's that honor, integrity, and humbleness have anything to do with the way you're leading this organization, NDRI?
Certainly, those values, both spoken and unspoken as I was growing up, have had an influence on my leadership approach and
That's
and how I try to run the organization.
Jamie?
Bill, like you, I come from a blue-collar background. How did you make that transition from your blue-collar background to a white-collar professional career?
I'd say gradually. You know, I started when I was young in a lot of the scut jobs that most young kids do. And then as I advanced in my education, was introduced and became comfortable with a whole range of people representing different backgrounds and professions.
Mm-hmm. Sean?
Bill, in your role, you often meet with the head of the NIH as well as Fortune 500 CEOs. That sounds like a difficult kind of mix to navigate. How do you manage that?
You know, Sean grew up exposed to a very eclectic mix of people, both highly educated professional folks as well as blue-collar folks. Worked in Washington, D.C. for 16 years and had to learn how to get along, mix, mingle, and get things done regardless of what party was in power. So I've learned to, you know, stand on my feet, assess the audience, and go from there.
Ethan?
Bill, I want to go back to the service that you performed as a youngster. How'd you get involved in that, and what were you doing?
Involvement was sort of all around me. So I don't remember a time when myself, my siblings weren't involved in various aspects of service, either through church-related activities, community philanthropic activities that my parents were involved in, raising money for different causes, different issues. So it was just really a part of our family dynamic and family culture.
What lessons did you learn from that, Bill?
You know, there's a bigger world than the world that you live in. And that world has needs for things that you likely take for granted. So, you know, keep your eyes open and apprised of the bigger world around you.
Would you agree today at NDRI that you also provide and support the needs of those that are really in need?
Well, our organization's, I would say, contribution is really on the biomedical research side. So certainly we believe we advance and know that we advance health and medicine in the country and actually throughout the world through the service that we provide.
Mm-hmm. David?
We talked earlier that you seem to be very drawn to individually motivated sports when you were younger. How do you think that applies today?
I think self-motivation and is critical to leadership. You know, when you are leading an organization, you're not getting on a day-to-day basis a lot of attaboys or accolades. It's really your job to be providing that to the folks that are working with you and for you. So, you know, the drive, that self-motivation and discipline that more individual sports required of me, I think has been beneficial to me in my leadership roles.
Mm-hmm. Shannon?
Bill, earlier in the green room, you mentioned that your mom emphasized to you as a kid that you should always be setting an example. How do you see that show up today?
Being mindful of how I treat others in any situation, and you know, walking the talk. If you espouse a set of values in your workplace or with your family, you have to live those. So I think that's how that plays out today in my life.
Mm-hmm. Drew?
Bill, your dad was the humble servant, and I'm curious how him showing you the way of the humble servant has inspired your leadership today?
You know, I think the whole servant leader phenomenon or approach or axiom, whatever term you want to use, certainly capsulizes the kind of leadership approach that I try to take. You know, being sound, being direct, and providing a vision, but doing that and in an embracing and encouraging way with the people that you work with.
What's the one thing you'd hear your father tell you if faced with a tough decision?
Never compromise your integrity.
Jeffrey?
Sean Blackburn, as a board member of this organization, what's it like working with Bill?
I think everything that Bill has shared with the audience is right on. He leads with integrity, and he really, I can't even explain the accolades of the people that he's put together on the board, and he handles them all with grace and care.
So you're a member of Bill's board, which is this large nonprofit organization. Tell us more about the purpose of the organization and why Bill's the right kind of guy to lead this thing.
As Bill said, you're taking early stage research of grabbing tissues and then digging into different protocols and down different paths, which are ultimately going to then progress into further research, such as Audrey or Stella are doing. And Bill's doing this in a nonprofit, and it's an unsung hero type of area, and he does it with pride every day, and he does it very accurately and controls a wide range of activities, like I said, with grace and poise.
Bill, how young were you when this unsung hero began to emerge inside of you? How young were you when this unsung hero began to emerge, Bill?
I think fairly young. I guess growing up with my dad and sort of the way that he carried himself, I always liked being active, engaged, and being a leader of sorts, but doing so in a way that, it wasn't critical to me that I be in the limelight, but that the mission or whatever project we were working on was the priority.
What's the best part of your gig? What's the best part of your job as being president and CEO of NDRI?
The range of people we get to work with, fascinating, just fascinating. Some of the, brightest scientific minds in the world, some of the brightest business people in the world, and really just a terrific group of staff.
So you're all about people, and you're all about helping organize the people and making sure that the spotlight's shown on them. You just want to be in the background making it all happen, don't you?
Yeah, I'm comfortable. I would say as the CEO, you can't always be in the background. Mm-hmm. So I'm cognizant of the fact that it's appropriate at times for me to have to step up.
What is
and I'm comfortable with that.
What is the website address for NDRI?
NDRIresource.org.
We've been speaking with Bill Leinweber, President and CEO of NDRI, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Jeffrey, can you give us a rundown on who else we've had on the air, please?
What a great show. We started with Audrey Greenberg, co-founder, executive managing director of the Discovery Labs. Stella Vnook, president and co-founder of MaiCell Therapeutics. Casey O'Donnell, president and CEO of Impact Services. And Bill Leinweber, president and CEO of NDRI.
I'd like to thank my co-hosts, including Jeff Mack and Shannon Lane, Newmark Knight Frank, Drew Hanlon, Ethan Milrod, GoTo, Sean Blackburn and Jamie Cook, Y Prime, and David Jackowitz, Evolution Financial Group, for giving me a hand structuring the questions, hopefully providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a radio show. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com. Thank you for joining us today, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.